I do. Thank you very much, Mr. Petrozzi, members of the board, friends in the audience. We have two presentations tonight. I don't believe we need an executive session, but we do have a need for your vote at 7 o'clock. I want to welcome those that are watching us on live stream. I understand we do get some followers, so welcome. Thank you very much. Welcome to the Niagara Falls Board of Education meeting of February 24th, 2022. We are going to have a brief presentation on a system of support for students. We're going to go through the budget, we'll review the agenda, and we should be ready for 7 o'clock voting. But let's begin with Mr. Corella and Ms. Rotella Zafuto, who have really worked very hard on what we're calling a multi-tiered system of support. This is really around the social emotional learning of students. We've had a number of presentations regarding math and the high school pathways, et cetera, et cetera. Today we're really going to focus our presentation on the social emotional part of student learning, which is critical. Rick, take it away.
There we go. Good evening, everyone. I'm going to start, and then Val is going to take over about halfway through, and we're going to give you a good overview of what we've been working on for this multi-year initiative. So your agenda is right here. I'm not going to read it to you, but you can see that we're going to spend a good bit of time talking about the social, emotional, and behavioral screener that we've begun using this year with our students. This first slide is important, and I'm going to spend just about a minute unpacking it for you, because you know how we love our acronyms in education. So you might be thinking, what is MTSS, or Multi-Tiered Systems of Support? This particular illustration captures it really well. Basically, a school district's MTSS is their system that includes programming and staff and policy and procedures that are in place to help students who are struggling to learn. And it can be in many different areas. Whatever barrier a student has or is having that is preventing them from getting the most out of their education, within your multi-tiered system of support, we should have a way of dealing with it. So if you take a look here, it's under the umbrella, you're going to see academics on the left side and behavior on the right. We have a long history of having academic supports in place. You've seen several presentations over the last year and even this particular year. For example, our last presentation on the new Math AIS program at the elementary level, and all of that fits under MTSS. So it definitely addresses academics. On the other side, the more recent addition is looking at school culture, climate, and behavior. We know that if a student isn't functioning well in school behaviorally, that is a major barrier to their learning. So on that side, we look at things like school-wide programming that encourages positive behavior and helps students function well within the classroom and within the school. Also, a large part of MTSS on this side of the model is tracking and intervening when students are having attendance problems. If they're not in school, they can't learn. Then generally looking at social emotional learning and health. What kinds of programming and supports do we have in place for children and in some cases families that need it in order to succeed in school? At our older levels, we also look out for students who might be having any kind of chemical dependency or other issue. And certainly we need to address bullying and other what we would call DASA infractions that would prevent a student from feeling safe in school. So if you look at the top again, involved in the MTSS process is decision-making process. We have in our schools what we call START teams, which usually include the principal, teachers, counselors, social workers, and others that review issues that surround students that are usually referred to them by a teacher to problem solve and see what they could do to help solve the issues that the student is having. There are universal screeners, in other words, different kinds of assessment, and we'll talk quite a bit about that tonight. Diagnostic measures, so we look at students' progress as far as their academics. And then a continuum of interventions. Students can have a little bit of an issue or a lot of an issue, and we have to have different ways to address it that respond to the intensity of students' needs. And then we always want to make sure that we're sharing information back and forth between the school, the families, the teachers, and the problem-solving team, so it really is truly a whole system. I want to give you a little bit of historical information. 2 years ago, Mr. Laurie asked Dorothy Brundage and myself, you know Dorothy, she's the assistant principal at Niagara Street, to form a steering committee and start to address some of the MTSS-related issues that we might not have in place district-wide or that we felt could need improving. So we began by looking at the two topics that you see up here. We began focusing on student attendance and also looking at new state mandates for social-emotional learning to try to discern where we stood as a district and what we needed to put in place. So we began, I'm not going to read all of that to you, but you can see that we took a really good look at our district trend data. We looked at our current practices in each school building. What kind of policies did we have? How clear were they? Then we started to look at what was being done nationally and what were some really good models of ways to address attendance issues. So we did quite a bit of research. And then we developed our own attendance intervention framework that includes 3 levels of interventions for students. We spent a lot of time doing that, and currently that resides in the district counseling plan. Because according to New York State regulations, one of the functions of a school counselor is to intervene with students and families if there are attendance at school issues. We also began to look at the state requirements for social-emotional learning. We reviewed a lot of research, and a lot of it said that school districts, in order to get ahead and really serve students well in this area, needed to address 4 basic areas. The one was early intervention. And we really are in good stead there because we have a lot of solid early childhood programs in our district. You certainly know about the recent acquisition of Head Start. And we have a very large pre-kindergarten grades, ages 3 and 4 program. We looked at the other pillars, and those are whatever initiatives address having a positive school climate and a positive classroom environment, social-emotional learning programming, and then supports for very high-needs students. Students who really have multiple issues that need to be addressed if they're to function well in school. So we decided to then take a look at what should we address first and what do we need in the social-emotional realm. And so what we came to the conclusion of was that we needed a data stream. We needed to know and be able to readily identify which students really needed support. And it is not always a student who is disruptive or a student who might be sent to the principal because he or she doesn't function well in the classroom. There are a whole other group of students who we could quietly miss if we didn't intentionally try to address their needs. And Val will talk a little bit about those kinds of intrinsic issues that our screener helps us identify. So we began to take a look at what tools we could use, and I'll talk to you a little bit about the one that we selected. And we began rolling it out by talking to our teachers, administrators about what our goals were and how we intended to kind of put our foot in the water. And then also we needed to look at the community partners that we already had in our schools and see if we could organize them better, if they needed to work more with us and we could pursue those kinds of partnerships. So we really took a broad look at what was already in place and trying to kind of organize it and make it fit into a coherent whole. And then we began to look at what interventions did we have in place for students both academically and behaviorally at different tiers. So tier 1 is kids in the general program all the way across the school. What do we do to encourage and teach positive behaviors? And then for students who need just a little bit of extra help functioning well, that would be tier 2. So what did we have in place there? And then tier 3 students are students who have significant barriers and really need significant help day to day. That kind of help is usually delivered one-on-one and often involves the school working very closely with the child's family. And you'll recall that I believe in November or December, I presented to you about the district's comprehensive improvement plan for this year. A large part of that plan addresses this initiative and how we need to continue to work on it. So we prioritized for this year making sure we have behavioral screening data on all of our students. The other aims that we have that are on the right-hand side of this slide is that we need to begin to build out our systems and document them in a way that we typically do for all of our other areas. We need to produce guidance documents and handbooks and other things that we can share with teachers and families that can be referenced and help guide our new staff and our veteran staff. So that's what we're going to be working on. And really we've already begun that task, and I'll describe how we're doing that. But that is a multi-year task. It's not just going to be accomplished this year. Now, you've heard us toss these terms around, my guess is, and we sometimes confuse them, and I'll often say, well, we use the BASC 3 BESS. Well, it's more acronyms. What does that mean? The BASC 3 is a broad instrument. It's the Behavior Assessment System for Children. We use the 3rd edition, so it's the BASC 3. The BESS is the actual screener that we've selected for our students, and that's the Behavioral and Emotional Screening System. So that's what we mean when we refer to BESS. How did we arrive at that? We started looking in the summer of 2019, and we had some teachers and counselors and other professionals from our district look at a bunch of different tools and rate them on some different criteria and decide what would be the best fit for our district. They recommended to me that we adopt this screener. The screener itself is basically a questionnaire, and it's administered in a couple of different ways. For young children, it is a teacher report. So the teacher, after working with the students in the first 4 to 6 weeks of the school year, after they get to know them very well, they complete the screening form where they answer questions about how the student functions and what they've noticed about the child. As the students get older, they can do that self-reporting themselves. Currently, we had our kindergarten through grade 6 students screeners completed by their teachers. The middle and high school students did a self-report. We're looking now as this is kind of our inaugural year, after we're reflecting on how things have gone, we're already thinking that some of our older elementary students in the future will probably be able to do the self-report on their own. We began using the tool last year. We thought, even though it was a hybrid year, and we had 1/3 of our students on remote, it really wasn't an ideal year to begin something this large in scope, but what we thought we would do is pilot it. So we had our district's kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade teachers trained in the screener, and we administered it only to the students in those grades who were in the hybrid model. So it was a smaller amount of kids. But that gave us enough data and feedback from teachers to know whether or not we were on the right track. And all the feedback that we received was very positive. So then coming into this school year, it became really the cornerstone of building this system. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Val, who's going to give you some more in-depth information about the screening and the results and what they tell us and what it means for us as a district.
Thank you. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the BAS 3 Best, the score reports, how it is scored, and then what our schools are doing with those reports. So how is the BEST scored? The students are given an overall Berry T-score that indicates their score. It ranges from average to elevated and then to extremely elevated. The normal range is 60 or lower. An elevated range is 61 to 70, and then extremely elevated is 71 or higher. The data is then disaggregated by grade, gender, ethnicity, school, individual teacher, so it can be broken down into all of those additional categories. Thank you. The Berry scores themselves are comprised of different categories, and the first form I'm going to discuss is the teacher form. This means that the teacher is completing the assessment for the student. Those scores are composed of externalizing, internalizing, and adaptive functioning. An example of some externalizing behaviors would be poor self-control, defies teachers or other adults, disrupts learning, is disobedient. So those are factors that you can visualize and you can see. Internalizing behaviors, a student is easily upset. They worry about things beyond their control. They appear sad or withdrawn. They spend time alone frequently and not with other students. And then the last one is the adaptive functioning, and that is your study skills, organizational skills, and work habits. And if you take a look, this is an actual student report form that a teacher will complete for the student. The questions are very simple, and the answers are easy as well. They are never, sometimes, often, and almost always. They are the same for every question, and it's as simple as, does the student worry? Is well organized? Has poor self-control? Is sad? And then if you look at the bottom, that is the individual student's report. So that Berry score is your overall score. And if you take a look at that student up there has an extremely elevated score. It's indicated in red, easy to read, easy to see. Then it's made up of those other categories that I had discussed earlier, the externalizing, internalizing, and adaptive response. This student scored in the yellow for both externalizing and adaptive response. However, their internalizing score was elevated or extremely elevated. The nice thing is, at the bottom, we have validity indicators. So the test will screen to ensure that it is valid. There is a consistency indicator to ensure that the same types of questions are answered consistently. There is response pattern index, and that means that the kid isn't just choosing 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, or else the test results would pick up on that. And the last index is the F index, and that is to indicate whether or not the rater was inordinately negative toward that student. So it does pick up on whether or not the rater was negative towards the student as well. And the next? Yep. Perfect. So the next form is the individual student form, and this was administered to students, all students in grades 7 through 12. So the students actually accessed a link by themselves, and they took the assessment on their own. The student report is comprised of 3 different indexes. Still has your internalizing risk index, but now it also has self-regulation risk index, which picks up self-control, behaviors that are indicative of hyperactivity disorder or ADHD, and then also personal adjustment risk index. And that consists of items that are associated with relationship with parents, interpersonal relationships, self-esteem. Do you feel your teacher is proud of you? Things like that. And then on this slide, we have an actual individual student report. The students will answer with the same type of answers, never, sometimes, often, and almost always. Takes very few minutes in order for them to complete. They simply select the correct answer or what answer best suits them and then move on to the next one. Again, you receive the same type of results with an overall Berry T-score. Again, the student is extremely elevated, and it shows a very elevated internalizing risk student assessment. And I purposefully use this student because another administrator at Gaskill Prep brought it up in evolution, and this is their specific student where they would never have known that this student was or had any internalizing behaviors because the student exhibited no problems within the classroom, showed no problems or behavioral issues, also no academic issues. However, clearly the student has high internalizing risk index. So they were, fortunate that we were able to screen the students in order to pick up on those kids who we wouldn't normally notice, have a problem. And then again, same thing as the teacher form. You've got your validity indicators. Same F index will determine whether or not that student feels inordinately negative towards themselves. And then you've got the consistency index and response pattern index. It's very important that those are all green before we can move on and implement some sort of intervention. And lastly, in terms of reports, this is part of our overall district report. And if you take a look, these are the exact results for our district. We have about 8% of students who scored in the extremely elevated zone, 15% that scored elevated, and then 76% that scored at normal risk. Again, this data can be further disaggregated by school, teacher, grade level, gender, ethnicity, etc.
Right. So you can see how these results are really important to us, being able to identify which kids need some assistance. And it could be, as the example that we showed from Gaskill, a student who's not disruptive in school but has maybe some significant anxiety issues, could have undiagnosed mental health issues. So that might be a student that we would want to have speak to their counselor occasionally, just touch base with an adult, with a caring adult who is able to talk to them. Otherwise, we could miss a student who might be harboring some serious issues. And that's the beauty of this screener, that it really identifies students with all of their needs. You've been very helpful and supportive in making sure we have enough counselors, and you've been adding social workers. And so how do we know which students need attention? This is how we figure it out. Now, what else do we have to do after we've got our screener done? We have a lot that we need to do in this realm of behavior. So the committee that I mentioned earlier, that's led by Dorothy and myself, this year we broke up into 4 smaller groups that, when you view them separately, give you a good idea of how we need to build the system. The first group is the Tier 2 Intervention Subcommittee. What these folks are doing is looking at what do we have in place as far as curriculum, programming, activities that we can use with students who just need a little bit of help in the social emotional realm. They might be having just a small amount of adjustment issues. They might be slightly disruptive in class, not overly disruptive. They may really be very disorganized or unable to handle certain parts of academic tasks. There are a lot of resources that we can bring into our schools to have our professionals use with kids to help those areas improve. So what we're doing right now is vetting a large group of resources, seeing which are good fits for us, and we're going to use some of the recent funds that we have received from the federal government to address social emotional learning. If you remember from the original hearing when we looked at the funds for the American Rescue Plan Act, we need to designate some of those funds towards initiatives like these. So it's very fortunate that we'll be able to bring some programs and some resources into our buildings. So that's one group looking at those. Another group is looking at our referral and intervention in progress monitoring systems. Do we have really clear forms that we can use? Do we have clear lines of communication between all of the people in a school, including parents and families, so we can communicate about which children we see might need help, how we can get parents permission to work with those students, and then how we can actually deliver interventions and measure whether or not they're working. So that would fit under that subcommittee. And then Tier 1 planning is looking at district-wide, what do we have in our schools across every classroom and across every school that helps build a positive environment and encourage good behavior and support for kids. So a good example of that would be when we did our sister school presentation a few meetings ago, and we showed you some clips from the Move This World SEL curriculum that is being used at those 3 schools. That is a good example of a Tier 1 program. All students have access to it. All teachers integrate it into their classroom instruction in some way, shape, or form. And so it supports everyone. And that's what Tier 1 is all about. And then the last group is looking at how we can manage all of this data. How should we be able to get everything together in a way that we know which students we've worked at, we maintain data privacy, we can access information when we need it. Let's say if a student needs a referral to an outside agency or to the Committee on Special Education, we need to have very clear systems where we carefully store information. So we're going to finish up by telling you a little bit about another pilot that we're trying with as far as resources go this year to kind of continue this initiative and branch out.
So we did notice that there were certain grade levels where we saw higher, extremely elevated students. That happened to be Cataract's 4th grade, Harry F. Abbott's 6th grade, and Gaskell's 7th grade. So we are piloting the total behavior program that comes along with the BASC 3 BESS in order to analyze the student reports and implement Tier 2 interventions.
So if that works well, if our teachers and principals think that it's worth it, and having that resource in district, then that would be something that I would recommend to the superintendent that we purchase to move forward with. Because as you saw from our results, about 23% of our students need some kind of extra support. So we want to make sure that we address those needs.
If you have another slide, Rick? I just want to make a comment. I just want to make a comment. First of all, great presentation. Really, really well done. What I like about, 2 things I really like about this is, first, something that Val said, Mr. Rotella Zafuto said. There's that student who's sitting there in your class, you've had them in your class, and they're doing okay in school, they're not saying anything, and they're going about their business, and we have lots of students like that. But internally, there's something going on. There's something going on. And if we have the validity to the question, we now have some data to say, oh my God, I didn't know Rick was this. I mean, so we're picking up cues. I thought that's a very powerful example. Secondly, we have some very direct data that says, just I'm not picking on Tony, Earl needs help. No, we're not doing that. We're trying to tailor the programs and the intervention, and we expose some of our higher risk grade areas here. It's not to call them out, but we're looking for patterns, and we can put programs right there. So it's not just, yeah, that's good for everybody, let's see if it works and throw it against the wall. We're able to really drill in, just like we would want a teacher to do with math or language arts, really differentiate what's happening for that child. So I really like the report. I think it gives us a great deal of information about, especially about those kids. And we have so many of them that aren't saying anything, but are internally really struggling with something. And it's a cue, so thank you.
I just, with these kids getting help for behavioral problems, how receptive are they going to be to go along with this?
Well, that's
You know,
a
I
really
mean,
good question.
It's going to be kind of tough to do, I would think. But
Well-
I support this program great. I think it's a
Yeah.
great program.
Well, that's actually there are 2 points to be made in response to your question, Nick. The first is, just like we do with academic support at Tier 2 and 3, we need parent permission to administer any kind of intervention at Tiers 2 and 3. So we have a parent notification letter, and we have our school staff reach out to parents and say, you know, we've noticed that your child is having some trouble, let's say, socializing in their classroom. Their interaction with peers is a little off, sometimes gets them into trouble. We'd like to include them in this program, in this group that's run by our school counselor or our school social worker. So we do get parent permission for that. Most of the time, parents are very happy to get the extra assistance. Occasionally, we will have a parent that will refuse. It's very rare, but we're obligated to let parents know, so we do need their permission. As far as the kids go, we would look for, we're looking for interventions that make kids feel a sense of belonging, that they feel a connection to the adult and the other kids that they're working with, and that it will eventually make them feel successful. So, like any other RTI menu, we'll try different interventions, but we need multiple interventions because a student may not respond to a particular program. Yeah, absolutely, they may not like it. They may think it's silly or it's babyish, or for whatever reason, every kid is different. So we want a whole cadre of different programs and that's what that one committee is looking for. So we can say, just like we do with our PEP program, that if program A isn't working for a student, okay, we're going to take you out of that and we're going to try program B. And a really good system, a good MTSS system has multiple options in it. We've got to avoid the one-size-fits-all.
Right, we got to have, that's what we have to grow, our options.
Yeah.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
It's also good to note that the Tier 2 interventions are in small groups, so hopefully it's a non-threatening environment for a student. They realize that they are not the only one that are experiencing those same behavioral issues.
Eventually, we have to get the student to buy into the program.
Right, and that's harder the older they get. The younger kids, they think everything's fun when they're doing some kind of a game or playing with someone who's coming into their classroom to help them. But the older students you have to deal with other
So
issues.
Ms. Dunn and I were having a sidebar here. That's where we use, just for example, you see all these short-term contracts we bring? Chef Bobby, Modi Cox. I'm just naming some outside programs. I can't, some of even the Ninja Barber program. That's where we use those type of programs at a higher level kid or a older level child to try to hook them. And that's an intervention too. So we do it with inside people, and you'll get a bevy of short-term contracts that you always approve. They are really interventionists for us in the MTSS system. So you'll see 10, 12, you'll see those contracts. We were talking about Ms. McWilson, Marcia McWilson. She does that at Kelfus and Niagara Street. And she's got her way, and she's good at it. She's very good at it. But she is a part of the MTSS profile. Sorry,
Right.
Rob.
Nick's question and your answer makes me pose another question. Out of curiosity, if we have a parent or guardian that declines, is our stance to accept that and move on, or do we make attempts to try to educate and
We'll
get them into
usually
the
make
program?
attempts to make them feel comfortable by giving them as much information as we can. And usually with that, Rob, we have to assure the parent that our only goal is to help the child function well. Just speaking very, very frankly, it's a little bit harder on the social emotional side, because parents will often feel that if their child is having issues in the classroom that fit in with that category, that it's somehow a reflection on them, and that they might feel inadequate or targeted. And so we want to make sure to give them the opposite narrative and build a good relationship with them. That's why having the extra counselors and social workers is so important, because that's their skill set. They cultivate family trust, and that's really important.
For the younger ages, are the parents involved in the process at all? Like, do they get?
Beyond giving permission,
No.
usually no, but we want to give them progress reports, and that's where the progress monitoring comes in. So, hopefully, depending on what program is being used, often like the regular classroom teacher is involved. So a child might go home with like a daily behavior slip. Depending on the age, it might just have, a smiley face or something else, a sticker or something that kind of gives the parent an idea of what kind of day or week the child had. So it really depends on what the intervention is.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions, folks? Okay. Well, thanks for your attention and for your support.
Thank you.
Sari calling from Lewiston Porter. Jimmy, you can report that. Seriously, it was. You saw it. I saw it. Thank you. Hey, Val, great job. Thank you, Rick. Great job. Next presentation is the budget.
Oh, lovely.
Lovely. No, it is lovely.
It's lovely, yes.
And while we're waiting for Becky and Julie to get ready, Becky to distribute hard copies for you, I just wanted to recognize somebody in the audience that's not named Ed Ventry, but hi, Ed. We have our fourth legislative district. Welcome, Mr. Elder, to our board meeting. It's nice to see you. Thank you for being here. Congratulations. We look forward to having you work with our students and you work with our district. So thank you very much, and I wanted to acknowledge Mr. Elder's presence tonight and welcome you. You're always welcome.
Absolutely.
Thank you for being here. So Rebecca and Julie and team continue to do a great job. I'm going to point just a couple of things out, and then I'll let Becky and Julie take it from here. We've gone to a 2-page budget, and I'll tell you why. But first, let's look at the greens first. Nothing has changed on the revenue assumptions. We've received no new information. Remember, the one line that is very fluid that's there is the 8.4 million. That's the governor's number. It's a good number, but it could change when the legislature gets a hold of it. I don't think it'll go down. I hope it goes up, but that's a good number comparatively. Nothing has changed on the revenue side. When you go to the assumption side, Ray, if you could just slide over a tad. So there is nothing changed here. However, I do want to highlight something, and we'll highlight things in green. That $1.8 million of BOCES not only includes an increase in tuitions for students out of district, but within that, something that Ray has to do is he has to upgrade our phone system. Our phone system is pretty old and ready to go, right, Ray? And our smart boards. Ray and team, technology committee, feel that it's time to move to a casting environment, which is a topic for another time that Ray and the technology committee have to present to you. But over the course of next year, we want to give our teachers the ability to cast. So I just wanted to point out that that's a big line, but we've accounted for a new phone system and new smart boards, if you can believe it, already because the technology has moved so fast that our teachers need to be able to do this process called casting. But that's in there. If you'd scroll up a bit, the bottom line number, ladies and gentlemen, has not changed. Remember, the number that they vote on, the number that you're approving, is that 164, 372, 347. That is what goes to the public on May 17th. That's what we're asking you at this point. It could change. That's what we'll be asking the voters to allow us to spend on education in Niagara Falls. That's what we have revenues for. And nothing has changed. Becky has, at your request, moved the reserve for debt because, as Mr. Petrosi's been pointing out, it is correct. We are using a reserve for debt service. So we've put that below the line. Before we go to the box, I want to have one more conversation. If you could look at our reserves, and we just left an audit committee. That's good right there, Ray. Those are our current reserves. If you see those, the use of fund balance is pretty unrestricted, right, ladies? We can do what we need to with that. You know what the rest of them mean. I have been floating the idea since October in public to the board about creating another reserve fund. It was for a capital repair or capital reserve. And I am going to retreat on my position with that. And the retreatment, or retrenchment, whatever the correct word is based on a conversation that our finance people have had with our attorney and have advised me. A capital reserve is not really seen too often in many districts. There's just a few that have it.
That's correct.
Very few. I actually asked Becky and Julie to look up the districts that have it, and not very frequent do you see that. I think there are ways, because there are some buildings, including this one you're sitting in right now, and the CEC building, that cannot be used during a capital project. Why? Because there's no students in them. We can't get that 98% reimbursement because there's no students in. And we can't just put a class over down the hall and expect to do it. We can't do that. That's not ethical, or it's not legal. We can't do that. We can't. I couldn't advise that. But I'm retreating in my position after listening to the attorney, and I'll let he and Julie and Becky speak. But I think that a capital reserve budget is very restrictive. And not only do we need a voter approval to get it set up, which we could, I know we could. I believe the voters believe in this district to keep their buildings up. But it's also very restrictive in how we can take it out. And oftentimes you would have to have another referendum just for a specific purpose to remove the money. And I believe with the position that we're in, there are other places we could reserve money if we need to, and other ways to keep money in the general fund budget to do those repairs and reserves, i.e. a roof at the CEC, without establishing by referendum a capital reserve or improvement budget, repair budget. A repair budget is very restrictive. You can only do it for certain repairs that qualify. And I'm looking for Earl here. The other one's a little bit less restrictive, I believe, but it still calls for voter approval, and I'm not trying to subvert voter approval because they'll see where the money's coming from anyway in our budget. It's just, it's also costly to have referendums. To run a referendum, it's costly, as you know, during our election. I just think that I'd like to pull back on that for now and have some more consideration of it. And I really would like Becky, Julie, or Mr. Massaro to comment on my statement here. Please.
I can start. This is something that we've looked at for a long time, and it's something that other districts are also looking at. A lot of our BOCES districts have been going back and forth asking for advice on how to either establish the best use of these types of reserves. And we all did our homework independently, And then we got together and compared notes and had a very, very good discussion. And we all agree the reserve for repair is very useful, but the definition of repair gets cloudy. That's the one thing that we're always a little gun shy about, is at what point does that repair become a project, like a capital project? So in light of that, we decide maybe the capital reserve is the best, but the limitations would really force planning at least 2 to 3 years in advance of any substantial work to be done. And the work that we foresee needing this for, actually, when taken in independent pieces, is very doable within our own budget. So we had this consideration that, you know, we can review this that way, take the one step at a time, look at the pros and cons, and at this stage, we all agreed, I believe, that holding off on the reserve was the correct choice.
Julie, anything? Mr. Massaro? Maria, help him, please, Maria. Come on.
I know.
Thank you. I think Becky has pretty well described the pluses and also the negatives toward the repair fund. It is an attractive, very, very attractive fund. It's attractive in the sense that the creation of it is relatively easier than the capital fund or some of these other funds. But the nightmare of it is involved in the details of the differentiation between repair and capital improvement. Right. And the risks are so horrendous should you make a wrong decision. As I mentioned to the young ladies, it is a thing that has been experienced in another industry that I've been familiar with, the difference between repair work and new work, because repair work would be at a different cost range than new work, and you try to differentiate between the two. For example, is the installation of a roof, is that a repair of existing building that is the capital structure itself, and therefore the new roof is repair, is a capital project, or a repair? Is it a repair? No. The roof is the actual capital project.
Right.
And the repair to it would be some sort of sheathing that you put over the roof to bring it back to its original state. And we shared with the young ladies the definition that's used, a three-pronged definition that is used mostly in the tax area as to what a repair is and what a capital improvement is. But if what you're doing adds value to the building or value to the assets you're doing, and if it is intended to be permanent in the structure itself, then even though you may think it's a repair, it becomes a capital improvement.
Right.
And lastly, let me say the risk is not only do you get an audit exception, but there is some very strange wording in the section itself that says those of you who knowingly would vote for repair when it is incorrect is a capital improvement are subject to a misdemeanor to ensure that you don't misuse it. So based on that, I think
I didn't know that about the misdemeanor.
Yeah,
I can't believe that. That's,
it really is some hard wording in the statute.
I did not know that.
At General Municipal Law, Section 6D,
That's
has
it. I
that
read
wording
15.
itself.
I read Law 15.
I thought you did. That would have been 3651.
Actually, the way you have to look at it,
Yeah.
by the time Angelo's done explaining, it'll all be a capital project.
Right.
It'll be
Earl
too
had a
far
que-
gone to repair it.
Earl had a question.
So would it be more appropriate to use like our fund balance for those types of projects?
There are many other
Yes.
ways to fund it because
Yes.
actually it would be excess funds from this current year or from another reserve that would fund the reserve for capital or repair. So rather than allocating funds to create the reserve, we could allocate the fund balance to do the work.
I think you're on the right track, Earl. I think that's what we're saying. And I'll just say it very bluntly. Instead of restricting us and putting our judgment in possible question, I wouldn't say we would misjudge it, in that restrictive way, I believe over the next month, it may be worth looking at possibly increasing our bottom line number to account for the use of reserve funds, as you were alluding to, I think, Earl, to do those kind of projects out of the general fund budget. So we're not hiding something or working around anything where the public would know, but we wouldn't be pulling it through a referendum to use from a reserve fund, which is required in that reserve. Right, Angela, you'd have to go to a vote.
Right. You have to.
So I think I said it the longest way as Angela said it. Earl, I think you're right. I think that's the way I'm, after listening to their advisement, I think it's a better and safer way to do it. And if we determine that we have the money to do that and the need is that great, I think your way is the better way.
I think there's just one negative. Correct me if I'm wrong, though. Let's
Okay.
just assume it was a $5 million expenditure that we took out of reserves. On our report card, that's going to show an increase to our budget for that particular year, correct?
That is correct.
Yes, Russ, yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
That's the downside.
And I don't want to say I was acting like Russ, because I'm getting more like him every day, and I don't really know if I like it. But I tell him that all the time. But what did I say to you, Becky and Julia? I said, I hate the fact that our bottom line is going up that much.
Right.
You know, we'd have to increase that number.
We're
We're already at 11, what are we at, Beck? We increased it.
11 million, yeah.
Yeah, we increased it 11 million. That's a lot. Now, you know why we did that. We're bringing back people from the CRISA funds. Last year, we did nothing. We're bringing back the 4 million so we don't fall off a cliff. But Russ is right. That's a heck of a jump.
Mark, let me ask it a different way.
Yeah.
Sure.
Let's just say, for the sake of argument, we're putting a roof on CEC or one of the buildings. If we took that money out of the general fund, could we then put it into a capital fund to fix the roof? Therefore, it wouldn't count on our report card?
Well, what would happen is we would have to budget in the general fund as an interfund transfer to the capital fund.
But it wouldn't count on a report card, though, or would it?
It would definitely affect the report card
Yeah.
to some degree. Because on the report card, you list your balances for your reserves and your fund balance.
Right, but it wouldn't go in, okay, for sake of argument, we decide today we're going to put a roof on and take it out of the
General fund.
take it out of reserves. So if
Okay.
we took it out of reserves and put it in the capital fund, it would never hit the budget.
It does,
Well,
because
it does on the reserve because we would reduce the reserves. But it wouldn't become an expenditure, would it?
it would, as an
Okay.
interfund.
Interfund
Because,
transfer becomes an expenditure on our budget.
yes.
So either way, it hits.
Right, because it would
No
be a
problem.
revenue to the capital projects fund and an expense to the general fund.
And the only way it wouldn't do that, we'd have to set the fund up before we funded it and fund it other than the cap. In other words,
Correct.
we'd have to go out and bond it or whatever, and it wouldn't hit. Understood. Thank you.
You can also set up a repair fund through budgetary appropriations on it, but the difficulty, again, is the determination as to what is repair and what is capital improvement. And there was a suggestion made in our conversations, which I thought was excellent, that possibly one can sit down for a year and determine what are the type of repairs
Yep.
that would qualify under a repair fund. And they are not only repairs as we know them to be, but they cannot be recurring yearly
Right.
or less than yearly repairs. So if you're looking at repairs like school districts that have school buses and try to fund your maintenance department out of it, that's recurring every year, and that's an improper repair. But if you were to theoretically put together a list of repairs that qualify for a repair fund, then budgeted a certain amount to meet those repairs over the years, it's an excellent way to go. I don't know if we can do it, though.
That's exactly what I'd like to do.
Yeah, and what you'd have to do, Mr. Superintendent, is spend some time to try to put together a list of items that are truly repair as the comptroller and as the state of New York, as SED looks at it. Because SED also has its definition of what a repair and capital improvement is.
That's right.
And they're pretty close to what the tax definition is, as we indicated. But that's an excellent thing to do if you...
No, I think that's what we'd like to do. My recommendation is going to be not to create this fund, not to add a resolution to the ballot, but to work, sorry, Paul Casari is very nervous, Jim. He's worried about snow. I'm not kidding you. He's worried about this. Is it supposed to snow? Because that's what he's calling me about.
4 to 6?
I know. Schools will be open, Paul. Niagara Falls will be anyways. Sorry, Dan. That's what he's calling for. Yeah, so I'm not going to recommend that to you. Now, I think you've had some information. We can talk about it again. I think our attorney has given you a pretty good side of the risk. I like the idea, and I think that that is something that Earl and team are going to start working on to make that list for you to look at. And I'm going to segue that way because I want to show you a second page to this. Because what I've asked 4 people to begin doing as leaders in the district, Rick and Maria on the academic side, the staffing side, the curriculum side, staffing and curriculum go together, to create a box. I've asked Earl and his team in operations and maintenance to create a box. And I've asked Ray and his team to create a box so that we begin to, and I do have that roof on there, and we titled it Facilities, Angela. Your point was a good one. We'll change that title. But what I want to start doing now over the course of the next month is we've got the program rolled forward. Everything that we have today, we have next year budgeted for, with all the increases in health benefits and raises, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now I want to look at where are the gaps. Rick has been presenting to you for the last 5 or 6 meetings different programs. Earl talks to you all the time about operations and maintenance, and we're going to get a little heavier into technology. So what we're starting to create, and I just want you to start to digest some of these things, is a list of adds to the budget. And what Becky did a really nice job of doing is she created the potential funding sources. We could get more state aid. We could use, as Mr. Bass pointed out, reserve funds or fund balance. Fund balance meaning money we're not going to spend this year. And as I told the Audit Committee, we are not going to spend all of our money this year, so there will be some left. You could raise the tax levy. I'm not suggesting it. I'm just saying it's there. I'm certainly not suggesting that. We have ARP money. You know, we have about 2 years left. We have a substantial amount of ARP. It's in a grant. That's not in the general fund, ARP money. Putting a roof on is not allowable, but staff is. We have grants. We have a lot of grants. They'll have money left over. And then we've got, sorry to pick on you, Earl Bass, but the old smart schools that when you get on the board, you get one project approved, then 5 years later, you know what I mean. We still have $2.8 million worth of that money that would fit into some of this. So those are your sources of money you could draw from. Now, I'm going to go very quickly through this because we have a review, and we'll talk about this more at our next meeting. I'd like to add an administrator, particularly at Niagara Falls High School. Rick gave you a presentation about a social worker, particularly at Niagara Falls High School because something that we have not done a good job of, and I own it, we had an early season issue and we put a number of students on remote learning. I'm looking at Ed, who's here. And we just cannot put students on remote learning and hope for them to improve them, their MT, all the stuff that Rick just talked about. We've got to intervene more, and I haven't done a good enough job helping those kids. The elementary math program, Rick presented that to you a couple weeks ago. We want to expand it to all elementary schools, not just the 5. The district-wide psychologist, I don't know where that would be at, could be helping kids at the high school, or I want you to know we're taking more and more special ed kids back from BOCES. We've talked about this. When you take special ed kids back, we have to add more special ed teachers, but we also need ancillary services, and that's a psychologist. I want to go back to the prep school music program. A while back, before the budget cuts, we used to have a vocal and an instrumental at each of the each of the middle schools, and we got away from that. And I keep listening to Rick's presentation, and we talk about the interventions. In my opinion, music is a major, as well as art, is a major reason why some of our kids come to school. And I think getting back to that staffing level at the middle school is needed. We got away from it because of budget problems, but I think music and art are MTSS programs. I really believe that. As well as art, which is going great guns at Niagara Falls High School. And if we continue down our road of the PS2 program, we're going to need more business support at the high school. This is just out of the gate. We just had a conversation. We need to have more discussion on it. Yeah.
Did you look at any intramural sports for this program also, what Rick was talking about?
No, we haven't. We haven't, but it's a good suggestion.
But it's not what it used to be.
No, it's gone. We don't have it.
That's what I'm saying.
We've added modified, but
Yeah, but I,
but 6th, 7th, and 8th grade
Yeah.
intramural sports is a
where
great
you got
idea.
Junior varsity, kids
It's a
have
great
reason to come
idea.
to school to
Because
for
Nick, I
athletics.
agree, just like I said about music and art, intramural sports, the television studio, those are all MTSS programs, in my opinion. Those are why kids sometimes will come to school. So I like the idea. And that's not a big cost item. When we go to technology, we need to upgrade the libraries, the computer systems in the library. We have a computer lab here at central office that we do a lot of training out of. And Russ you were talking to me about this earlier. We could get this out of our smart schools money, but I don't know if I want to wait. This is where, well, however long it takes, you know how long it takes, to start integrating our proc system. You recalling this conversation, Mr. Petrozzi? To integrating our proc system, you know, the proxies that you come into with everything. And it may be worth just doing without using the smart schools money. That's an estimate Ray's given us. The last box, and again, we're just giving this to you for a first look. I want Earl, in charge of that department, to look at equipment and things that we may need in the upcoming years that we have funds for now, so we don't get hurt by not having a salter or a loader or mowers or floor scrubbers. You know, I can't describe all of these things, Earl, but my point is, I want to put dollar values with things that Earl believes we need to never get caught without having updated equipment. So from Rick and Maria on the staffing and curriculum side, to Earl, to Ray, I've charged them with working with the administrators, their departments, and conversation like we had, and to start to build out these boxes as to what we would add if we had additional funds, carryover, reserve, ARP money, what have you. This is a first shot out. That's a small example, no offense, but a good example of things that we may need to think about. And then there are your funding sources below it. So, again, first shot. I want to now work on this page to build out things that we could do to enhance our program. And to Angela's point, this is where I want to build out this box where it says facilities, bad title today. But all of that differentiation between repair and replacement, to create another box that looks like that, to do a good study of what it would look like. That's an estimate, Becky or Earl, we got from a while ago for the CEC.
Yeah, that's based on an actual quote that has been increased for inflation.
And Earl's, Maria did, and Rick did work on their numbers, and Earl did work on his numbers.
Mr. Laurie,
Yep.
we've done such a great job of this one sheet of paper. We really have. I'm wondering if we can't do another sheet, or here's the back side, to list to us, who've been here for quite a while and still, I'm sure, are not aware of all the different dollars that we have sitting on, to look at them globally and start making those kind of decisions.
Sure.
I mean,
We
there's
can
millions
expand it
out
out.
there that we haven't done.
Yeah, we could expand it out. I just want to keep this simple so that any, I never believe in 44-page binders. Just a one-pager is an easy thing. Yeah, red and blue, but I'm happy to put some detail behind it and some extrapolation of some of these numbers. Or to show you, I'm looking at Rob, or what are we spending on this category now? And what am I asking you to go to on this category? You jarred me to think of that question you asked Rob a lot. But I want to give you a look at where we're at. There's still so much to know. I believe the governor will have an on-time budget, April 1st. I think we're going to find some other sources of revenue. As I said to the Audit Committee, we do not ever include casino money, that we just list that as a potential source of money we're going to get someday. But I want to continue to work with staff to flush this out a little bit more. And that was a really good suggestion about intramural sports, because we've gotten away from it. Tony?
Becky, question about BOCES.
Sure.
That, what's that, $1,888,000 and some odd dollars. Does that entail just the tuition of our students that either get special ed, their trades, their,
Yes.
is that only that, or is that also like computer programming and stuff like
It's
that?
everything.
It's
our
everything?
complete package of BOCES services from both Orleans, Niagara, Erie One, and any other cross contracts we have with BOCES.
And to your point, Mr. We could show you that in some more detail about what's in there. We could do that. Yeah. Right, well, right. Some of the reimbursement rates are different depending on what the issue is, so.
And we are, in the BOCES also, do we get, what percentage of reimbursement do we get with that?
It varies.
It varies.
It varies,
Tough
but
question.
we're
Sorry about
around
that.
80% for reimbursement.
Okay.
When it averages out, Tony.
On like a lot of items like the technology and things like that.
Okay. I
So,
follow you.
again, Mike, I don't mean to imply, so we upfront it 1 year, and then we get 80% of it back in the following year's budget.
It's-
Yeah, so it does, but we've got to upfront it the first year we buy it. And then we get but it's not, I learned this early on, everything is not 80%. Some things are 35%, some things are 45%. It depends on the service. I don't really understand how the formula works, but.
It does. Well, they all have different formulas, and if we're paying for people, there's a cap on how much of their salary we get aided on, and we get aided at different rates. But it is all different, but our basic rate is about 80%. If you remember in the revenue side, our revenue increased for our BOCES aid this year, or we expect it to increase, 3.4 million, and that is based on the fact that we purchased computers in the current year's budget. So
So now
that
we're
is
getting that back.
generating that excess aid for next year.
So last year, we thought we were going to buy $4 million worth of computers for grades 7 through 12, plus the teachers. So we had budgeted for $4 million, and we're getting back a little, 3.4 million.
Yeah,
Now
that's
in
just an overall
just-
change.
Yeah, just.
Not the board members yet, right?
No, not the board members yet. They're getting this, they're getting the excess cost aid figure.
I think that's where we have to really look at the ancillary personnel that we're going to have to acquire by bringing back more of the students too.
We do.
Mark. That's
Yeah.
big bucks.
It is. It is.
I mean, you're looking at a psychologist at 80,000, you're looking at some big bucks. That we're going to need those to do a job the right way.
That's right. I completely agree, but let me just tell you something, and I am a little bit partial to our district. And this is no affront, and I'm not casting an aspersion on any other district or program. But I think our teachers do it better. And I'm not downing anybody. But if I had a special needs child, I would want that child in his or her school closest to his home. Closest to his or her home. That's you're not wrong, Jim, because it's not just the teacher, it's the speech teacher. We have a contract with occupational therapy with the hospital. Sometimes they need a personal care aide. That adds up. But and these are often challenging students. But I firmly, and we brought 3 classes back this year, and I'm proposing that we bring 3 more classes back next year, because I believe special education children, even those that are severely involved, are better and deserve to be served in a school close to their home. Now, that doesn't mean if you live in DeVoe, you're going to go to Maple, you might have to go to Cataract, but in their home city. And it may, I don't know where it falls financially. It's costly, and we don't get necessarily the aid back on all students, even though we can stack some of them. But I just philosophically believe for our kids, they belong in our schools. And our teachers do it as well, if not better, and our parents and kids deserve to be in our 11 schools.
Mark, quick question.
Yeah.
For the additional roles that we
Yes, sir.
potentially might add, for some of these salaries, that's like that's an estimate of the top level, but in reality, it could be lower depending upon, because if not, it's pretty competitive, and I know we're looking for people, and those are some.
Becky took a figure, used an average figure and put in the benefits, but as we have people retire and bring new people in, Joe Girizzo used to tell us that's called breakage. Breakage. So there is a little bit of breakage, but don't forget into some of, because I always used to try this on these guys. Yeah, but don't forget, we've got to pay terminal leave, we've got to, in the first year, we've got to pay all of those things. So there is breakage, but it's not as much breakage as you think. That's what, when we used to, Becky and I don't argue anymore. We get along really well, but when we used to argue, that's what she used to tell me. But you're forgetting about terminal leave. She sounds like she went to the Russ Petrozzi budgeting school. She used to tell me, you're forgetting about terminal leave. What else? All that other stuff.
The benefits.
The benefits and all that stuff. The medical, yeah. So you're right, Rob, it is. But we do get breakage, don't we? We get, come on.
Yes.
We get some breakage.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we get some, Rob.
Thank you.
Pardon me? Why don't you tell us why with the microphone, Ms. Massaro, because you have a good point.
With the microphone.
See, Earl, I get mad at her too, Earl. I'm not mad at her.
Not as much as before, because we are hiring quite experienced teachers now.
Yeah.
And we're not, typically, Becky and I had this conversation when she was looking to put a salary figure. Did you end up with the step 3 or step 5?
I ended up staying at step 330M.
Right.
But we both know that there's the potential for them to come in higher.
Yeah, we've been having folks come in much higher than the step 3. It's not going to be everybody, because we're also hiring new teachers right out of school too. But we have been hiring people at step 10, step 11. We've been doing great recruiting out of the Buffalo School District.
Yeah, you can say it.
The reason for the higher steps is their experience from other
Correct.
districts? Thank you.
Correct. Our contract allows us to give them up to 10 years of step experience.
And we have. As long as Maria certifies the experience, we have given it to them.
Correct.
They've earned it. They've earned it. So she's done a good job working for us in the Buffalo School District. Yeah, this is live stream now. I'm going to really be in trouble. So it's all right. I'll say it. We will continue. Just going forward, a couple things. We will bring you the budget the 10th, the 24th of March. I think we'll be in good stead. On Thursday, April 7th, we're going to ask for a special meeting next month because that's when I'm going to give you the final number that goes on the ballot and that goes out to the public. After that, we still have time to move and play and work and talk. The bottom line, Ray, would you just mind scrolling? The bottom line is it going to be 164, 372, et cetera? To Mr. Bass's point, are we going to look into maybe increasing that because we want to do something that legally qualifies? Are we going to get more money in the revenue line? But Russ, your feeling is my feeling. I'm watching that number jump so high so fast. And you understand why it came, but it does something that I worry about. Yeah, a lot. One shot meaning because we're taking people back from a grant.
Well, that's not one shot, that's recurring costs.
Some of it is. Some of it is. Oh, the people are.
Well, the people are reoccurring.
The people are reoccurring.
I think when you look at expenditures, when you, for instance, if you buy a salter, that's a one-time expense.
That's a one-shot.
When you have staff, it's continuing expense.
Correct.
I think that also has to be consideration.
Correct.
Now, I'm not saying we don't hire more staff, but that's going to stay.
Yep.
Unless, when the money, you know, when we're through all the federal money and everything, we don't want to be turning people loose. I'm not.
No, I don't want to do that. I know you're not saying that, and I don't want to do that.
No, that's my point, is as long as we can afford them for the next, you know, foreseeable future, for 10 years.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Can I just point out one thing, Ray? Can you just like zoom out so we can see that first page in its entirety? Is there a way? I do just want to point out the change in the format on, to see the whole page, if you can scroll down a little bit. If you see, now I did move the actual gap and over to the right, so it would stand out a little bit better. It's easier to read that way. So if you took the revenues as we know them today, less the appropriations we're anticipating, we actually do have a gap of $555,000. And the way we're closing that, we're recommending to close it is using that reserve for debt. So anything that we add to it, obviously, would require another funding source.
Great job, Becky. We just have a couple of minutes. Are there any, the agenda hasn't changed much. Maria, do you have any significant staffing things?
There was nothing significant that everybody should have received the changes with the asterisks. And if you have any questions about those, I'm happy to answer them for you.
Nothing's changed on the resolutions from the last 2 weeks. And any questions on staffing for Maria? Thank you, Mr. President.
Okay, you want Tony asked for a few minutes, so how about we just take 5? We'll start about 3 or 4 minutes after. Let's see. I'm only missing one. Mr. Kansemi.
I got a great gift. I got to tell Nick what I got. Nick, remember I tell you about my
I wish to apologize to the audience. We are slightly late this evening. We had an audit committee meeting this afternoon, and it took an extra few minutes.
He asked me, I was thinking about you. I was going to bring it. He asked me to play it.
You're bad.
Would everybody please stand for the pledge to the flag?
Let us pray. Dear Lord, we thank you for allowing us to gather today for this meeting and making decisions for the betterment of our schools and future of your children. We ask and thank you for continued blessings for all of us and praying for complete recovery for our colleague, Paul Cadella. Thank you, Lord, in Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you, Clara. Judy, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Bass?
Present.
Mr. Bilson? Mr. Consemi? Mr. Capizzi? Mrs. Dunn? I've marked Mr. Cadella excused.
Correct.
Mr. Pareto? Here. Mr. Velardo? And Mr. Petrosi.
Here, thank you.
8 present.
Letters of communication, I do have a thank you note from the Serto family and the Flager family through the passing of Elizabeth, and I'll pass that around. Oral communications, there are 4 people on the list. Are these agenda items or non-agenda items? I'm going to assume they're non-agenda items. If I'm incorrect, please let me know. So they will be at the end of the meeting. Okay. We'll start with recommended actions of the Superintendent of Schools. Minutes, we'll take 401 and 402, the minutes for January, and also budget transfer number 7. Do we have a motion? Move. Second. Questions? Call the roll, please.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
And we do not have any bids this evening. 4.04 is the Treasurer's Report, and 4.05 Budget Status Report, which are received and filed. 4.06 Personnel Report Certificated. Moved by Mr. Consemi, second by Mr. Pareto. Any questions? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Bass? Yes. Mr. Bilson? Yes. Mr. Consemi? Yes. Mr. Capizzi? Yes. Mrs. Dunn? Yes. Mr. Pareto?
Yes.
Mr. Velardo? And Mr. Petrosi.
Yes, thank you.
All in favor?
Taken together, we'll take 408 and 409. These are the committees on special ed and preschool special ed. Mr. Consemi? Mr. Bilson, any questions? Call the roll, please.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion's carried.
Okay, thank you. 4.1 short-term contracts, and we do have several. Kingdom Transformation, Inc., Playworks Education, Pride Center, Dr. April Sweeney Williams, Kim Nynek, Amelia Pyle, Marcia McMilson, Amplify Science Professional Development, and Elise Rector, Marion Leonard Elementary Math, National Federation for Just Communities, and Niagara Alliance for Restorative Practices Workshop. May we have a motion, please? Mr. Consemi on the motion, second by Mr. Bass. Questions? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Bass?
I have a question.
Question, oh, hold on.
I would just like to let our community really know that our administration has gone out and tried to service all the needs of our teachers and our students. And they have gotten some very great programs going, and I just want to say thank you. You've gone out of the box. I've never seen this in my 15 years on the board.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Bass?
Yes.
Mr. Bilson? Yes. Mr. Consemi? Yes. Mr. Capizzi? Yes. Mrs. Dunn? Yes. Mr. Pareto?
Yes.
Mr. Velardo? Mr. Petrosi?
Yes.
Thank you.
Just a quick comment for the audience. We've been working on these items for the past month. It does seem that we go through them very quickly, but there's been much attention paid to them. I just want to let everybody know. Moving on to 4.11, a new item, the January 2022 Head Start Report and Budgets.
Move.
I have a motion by Mr. Pareto, second by Mr. Capizzi. Any questions? Call the roll, please.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Reports accepted.
We do not have any unfinished business. New business. 6.01, approval acceptance of funds from Learning and Technology Grants. Who had the motion? Was Mr. Velardo, second by Mr. Bilson. Any questions? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Bass?
Yes.
Mr. Bilson? Yes. Mr. Consemi? Yes. Mr. Capizzi? Yes. Mrs. Dunn? Yes. Mr. Pareto?
Yes.
Mr. Velardo? Mr. Petrosi?
Yes, thank you. 6.02, we do need a special meeting on April 26th. April 26th,
Yeah.
is that the BOCES?
That's
vote?
to vote on the BOCES budget.
Yes. Motion by Mr. Consemi, second by Mr. Bilson.
And it is a Tuesday, not a Thursday, just because the BOCES budget has to be voted on before that Wednesday. So just, we'll remind you a couple more times, but that's a Tuesday that month.
Any further questions? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Bass?
Yes.
Mr. Bilson? Yes. Mr. Consemi? Yes. Mr. Capizzi? Yes. Mrs. Dunn? Yes. Mr. Pareto?
Yes.
Mr. Velardo? Yes. Mr. Petrosi?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll take 603 and 604. One is the third amended approval between the City School District and Aries Transportation. And 604 is approval for a contract for professional services for our truancy program. Mr. Consemi on the motion.
Second.
Second by Mrs. Dunn. Questions? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Bass?
Yes.
Mr. Bilson? Yes. Mr. Consemi? Yes. Mr. Capizzi? Yes. Mrs. Dunn? Yes. Mr. Pareto?
Yes.
Mr. Velardo? Mr. Petrosi?
Yes, thank you. 605 and 606 are payments. One goes to Ferguson Electric, and the second to John W. Danforth. Thank you, Mr. Pareto. Second by Mr. Velardo. Questions? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Bass?
Yes.
Mr. Bilson? Yes. Mr. Consemi? Yes. Mr. Capizzi? Yes. Mrs. Dunn? Yes. Mr. Pareto?
Yes.
Mr. Velardo? Yes. And Mr. Petrosi?
Yes, thank you. I think it's time to put our speakers in. Judy, am I correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, I will call on you, and if I mispronounce your name, please forgive me. I have, looks like Portland Jackson, 16th Street. Did I say that right? I'm sorry. Thank you, ma'am. Feel free to correct me. My wife does it regularly.
Is there a mic up there?
There is, yes. Oh, where is?
Oh, good. I didn't see it on the stand, so.
Name and address, ma'am, if
Testing.
you would. Name and address, please.
Yes, my address is 552 16th Street, Niagara Falls, New York. My name is Portland Jackson. Good evening, school board members. I am here today to talk a little bit about Black history. And as a part of that, I want to make mention of the Men Standing Strong Together / Women, which I'm a part of. I am their secretary and also a member. I want to encourage you and to employ you to consider making this group a long-term mentoring group. They have been in the schools since for quite a while now. Ms. Gloria Dosen is our founder, and they're doing great things. It would be most helpful to our children if you add them as a part of the curriculum, because it would change some differences. It already has changed some differences to our students. It's making a big impact as opposed to what they were before. Now, I'm not in the schools, but I have heard a lot of things, a lot of good things. When I was growing up and coming up from a single mother, we were not allowed to come to school dressed any kind of way, and we did not. And we did not wear anything, we did not do anything we wanted to. But today you see students coming to school dressed in halter tops, tube tops, pajamas, hoodies. All of that has a great impact on our society today. So Men Standing Strong is really a good avenue to go through and to just really, they're really a good mentorship group. And if we take a look at what they have done and we take a look at all the things that they have added since they have been at the Niagara Falls High School and at Gaskill, we can see that it is a positive effect. It's not just for Black students, but it's for all students could benefit from it. Thank you.
Thank you. Devon Stalling. I will. Devon Stalling, 29th Street. Ah, oh. Come on up.
All right. You want me to put this in here for you? There you go. Take your mask down.
Good evening, members of the Board of Education. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to all of you. My name is Devon Stones. This is Black History Month. I go to Niagara Street School, and we are doing a lot of nice things. But I want children to know about history all year, not just 1 month of the year. We get this good news some thought. You have the power to make it happen. Thank you. God bless.
Good job. Yep.
Who's your
Thank you
teacher,
very much for
Devon?
coming.
Devon.
Devon?
Devon. Who's your teacher? I'm sorry, I didn't hear you, Devon.
Miss Montgomery.
Oh, you're lucky. You got a good teacher, Devon. No wonder you're so smart. My gosh, good for you.
We appreciate you coming. Thank you very much. Thank you, young man.
I like the way the young man is dressed. He's dressed for school. He looks ready to go.
We wouldn't have it any other way.
Right, I understand. I got you. God bless.
Okay, Gloria, you're up.
Thank you. I'll fix you up. I'll fix you up. Oh, praise the Lord. Good evening. And I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to you members of the Niagara Falls Board of Education. Tonight, each time I come before the members, it is to share important facts to enhance our students' learning. It is Black History Month, a month that seems to ignite some controversy. Maybe because it was a time in history that happened to a people that looked like me, a time which more than 10 million Americans were brought against their will to work from sunup to sundown for free to these United States. Despite all the pain and suffering and inhumane treatment, we made lasting contributions to this United States of America. Just as the Holocaust is remembered, although it did not happen in America, slavery should not be forgotten. Our teachers should be given true knowledge of the kidnapping of a people so that teachers may, in an open and diverse way, teach all students of slavery that existed more than 400 years. Even so, these people survived, and in spite of the hardships, gave their blood, talents to build this nation. If teachers were empowered with the truth, they would not feel Black history to be, oh, here we go again. Instead, to embrace the facts just as the facts of the Holocaust is taught. I don't know if any of you have taken time to watch the documentary surrounding the struggle of Black people. Being hung, being denied decent homes, being denied employment, and the list goes on. You have the power to change things in this city by including Black history, which is American history, all year. Then it would not be a focus on 1 month. I know some of you are uncomfortable because these things have not been shared among each other. The most important thing is race, not to be spoken of from our board members, which makes it difficult to be honest about Black history. I ask the board members that we come together and dialogue about race. We are living in a society where it's most needed for everyone's well-being. It's no longer wise to turn an eye on the truth. We should not harbor ill feelings in our heart when the truth is being told. And another truth is that we need more African-American teachers in our school. The truth is we educate Black students, so where are our Black educators? So I ask you all to give this a lot of thought. We have not talked about race around a round table, and this is something that is missing in our city and our schools. For all of our children to be empowered, to be the best that they can be, they need to know where they came from. Thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you. Rodney Sheard? Sheard. I'm sorry. Give me. Rodney here? No. He didn't make it. Okay. All right. I guess we're all set there. Moving on to information and reports. Mark, you're up first.
Thank you very much. Ray, if you could scroll a little bit for advanced planning. Ray gave a really good report today to the Audit Committee as a result of our internal audit on information services. And it was very well done. And I'm going to ask Ray to give that to the whole board on the 10th. It talks about the Bonadeo audit of our technology. And Ray did it in such understandable terms. And it's such a scary topic. Cybersecurity is such a big part of what we have to be aware of. So Ray will do that, and you'll also have a resolution to approve or not approve the audit at the end of the month. I want to give you an update on P-TECH. Ms. Rotella Zafudo was here earlier, and we're recruiting for our second class. In March, we're going to be at Gaskill and then at LaSalle, I believe, and I'll give you the dates, but her phone is ringing off the hook with 8th graders hoping to get into our P-TECH program, our partnership with NCCC and industrial manufacturing. Becky and Julie will give their wonderful budget presentation. We will have the UB Center for Trauma-Informed Care, and then it's Ray's month for technology. He'll give us the technology plan at the end of the month. So you'll see a lot of Ray next month. Again, welcome and congratulations, Mr. Elder. We're pleased that you were able to join us and stay for the whole evening. And again, congratulations on representing a lot of our students and their families. You represent a big portion of our district, and we look forward to working with you going forward. A couple of other things. We're moving forward, speaking of technology, for the first time our pre-K registration packet is going to be computerized. So that's a step in the right direction, probably a step too late, but I'm pushing Rick and Ray in the technology department to make it electronic, our registration packet and the sign up for pre-K at least. They have that well underway. And then we're moving on to a strong push for next year to have electronic report cards only. I think it's important that we push fast and hard and reduce paper and really stay up to date, and we're a little bit behind with electronic report cards. I want to just make a comment about masking. I know I've received many calls this week because there was some confusion, and I know we do have people watching live stream, and I do want to take it head on. I don't think it's something we should shy away from. And, you know, my position and your position has been shared clearly. It's my belief, and I have no inside knowledge, that after this week, when many schools come off of their midwinter break, which we're not on, that by next Friday, the governor will make a statement. And I'm hoping she makes that statement to make school districts responsible or masks optional. I just want to caution everybody, and I hope that that will happen. I really hope that that will happen. You know, that's the way I think it should be. I think we've talked about that enough. My anticipation is that we'll know something probably around March 4th. If we don't, we may need to have another conversation. I don't want to get too far into that tonight. But I know I've had some conversations individually with board members. I'd ask for everyone's continued patience around the issue of masking. The district has done, in my opinion, the staff has done, in my opinion, a very good job of being compliant and committed to wearing masks. It's high time that we start looking at a different approach. And again, I'm just kind of putting it out there that my expectation is on or around March 4th or 7th, we should have some updated information. So that's that. You know, we're started to talk a little bit about Black history from the speakers. I know Ms. Massaro had the opportunity to speak, to read at Niagara Street. I don't know if Devon was in your class or not today. Maria, and I'm going to read Monday in second grade, Mr. Ford Jones' class, figures, and I'm going to read about, I picked my book, it's going to be Mr. Velardo Jackie Robinson. I hope that that's okay, but I know they're having a good time reading about, and I picked Jackie Robinson to read to the students on Tuesday around 11:15. I think I got second grade, so if I get stuck with any of the concepts, Nick, I'll ask you. I'll ask you. I want to thank the Men Standing Strong group for their continued support. We do it together. We stand next to each other and do it with each other. I thank you very much for that. I want to tell everyone also that we are planning, we have a date set for our Bleneva Bond naming celebration. New York State this week on Tuesday officially accepted the name. It becomes effective September 1st, 2022. It was officially recognized by the state this week. And we're planning a very large, as it should be, celebration on Tuesday, August 30th, around 4 o'clock. Julie is going to send out, Julie is going to send out save the date cards so that everybody can mark their calendars far ahead of time. And Mr. Marino and Ms. Brundage are putting together quite a celebration, quite a big celebration for that day. We're talking about blocking off streets and so on and so forth. So this is not going to be just a very quick, this is going to be quite a celebration with kids involved, and we're looking to do something special on Niagara Street. As it gets closer, board members, we'll start bringing you more of the updated plans, so you'll know what will happen. But this will be a street blocking celebration, as it should be. I want to conclude one more financial fact from the Audit Committee, because it gets lost sometimes. The Audit Committee tonight reviewed $31,566,012 worth of expenditures the district made between September and January. The auditor found only 6 corrections for $9,000. That is 3/10,000th of a percentage. That's pretty good work on the audit findings. And that's what continues to keep this district completely clean in terms of where the money is. And I'm really proud of the financial team that we have for that clean approach. I want to close with a couple of good things here. First of all, let's all think about 5 Niagara Falls High School students who are now in Albany They are 5 wrestlers. They are all competing for the New York State Wrestling Championship. We have never sent that many wrestlers to Albany from Niagara Falls High School. That's the most. 3 is the most we've ever sent. We're sending 5 today, and I wish those young men the best. Their sportsmanship is a hallmark of their integrity and their performance. Let's root them on. Let's root those Wolverines in. No matter what they do, they'll represent us well. But that's a big number, 5 wrestlers for the state championship. I don't know how many schools send 5. Our wrestling program is one of the elite in the state, and I want to particularly call out Coach Egan and Coach McCoy, who do a really good job with them. Finally, I just want to share some news. It was in the paper today. The 4-year graduation results are now official, and I think it's fitting to conclude with that. And while we've improved, I think, very greatly, very well, we're not satisfied, never satisfied until we get to where we need to get to. Our overall graduation rate has improved to 77%. That's certainly not where we want to be. Well, I'm looking for a number with a 9 in front of it. I'd like it to be 100, but I'm looking for a number that starts with the 90s, and we will get there. But that is an improvement, a significant improvement. Number 2, the gap between African American or black, brown students graduating and white students is narrowing. So we are at about 79% white, 75% black and brown, which is a narrowing of the gap. So there is no discrepancy based on race. I'm proud to say that. I'm proud to say that our dropout rate has dropped to 13%, still too high, but certainly an improvement. I'm most proud to say that our students with disabilities, the graduation rate for our students with disabilities has risen from 54% to 69%, which is an incredible achievement. Now, I am certainly cognizant of the fact that there weren't Regents exams, and some of our students do struggle, and they did have the opportunity to get their class grade to capture, but everybody else in the state had the same opportunity. So I'm proud of our students. I'm very proud of our teachers. I'm proud of the staff, not just at Niagara Falls High School, but district-wide, for making those improvements. And I think that is something to be celebrated, and momentum that we've got to keep moving forward. And at a time when there's a lot of negative things going on, that's really good news. So I bring that information to you with a great deal of thanks to the 9 members of this board for supporting everything we've ever asked for. And I say thank you very much for doing that. That's all I have, Mr. President.
Mark, if I can ask for clarification or just a statement. The graduation rate, that's based on 4 years, correct?
Thank you.
Okay.
That's a
4-year
well, I'll tell you.
You too.
I'll tell you, that is a 4-year cohort. And you know, we've had conversations here about what constitutes somebody in the cohort. Remember, and I know you railed against this, if a kid comes in one day and we can't find him, that counts against us. So that's 4-year, Mr. Petrozzi. Our rate is slightly better for 5-year and 6-year, but the goal still is to be in the 90s. But you're right.
And also on the audit findings of that $9,000 or $10,000, just a comment, they were good expenses. It was procedurally incorrect. They were allowed expenses.
Right.
Just the paperwork didn't follow the way it should.
We didn't have a purchase order in
time.
In time, we should have. Actually, one of them was from 79th Street because of the sewer system.
Which there's no way you can have a purchase
How would we
order.
know that? But the 79th Street sewer system, because of one of the board members, is very important. Somebody who lives on 79th Street, I didn't want to hold it up. So. It did. So, yeah, no, seriously though, you're right, Mr. Petrozzi. Those 6 findings were not money. They were, we didn't have, in 5 of them, we didn't have a purchase order in place. And with one of them, we were overcharged, but we didn't pay it. So we got that money back. So those are not financial misgivings. Those are procedural steps. And 6 compared to what used to be is pretty darn good.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you.
No problem. Moving on, Mr. Bass.
I don't really have much to say. Oh, actually, I do have something to say. I want to thank Mark and the district. This year, the school district is sponsoring a college tour to historically black colleges and universities next month.
Yeah.
First time that the district is actually doing it ourselves. I'm going to be one of the chaperones. And
Yeah.
One of the places that we'll be visiting during that tour is the African American Museum.
Well, first, if you don't mind, Mr. Bass, thank you. I'm sorry. We'll make sure to bring back pictures and video. We're sponsoring the district is sponsoring 34 students to go on a tour of historically black colleges and other sites at the 29th, 30th, 31st of March. And I feel better that you're going to be one of the chaperones, because I've seen some. No, I'm kidding. But I'm really pleased that 34 of our students from Niagara Falls High School are going to get that opportunity. Thank you for bringing that up, and I want to put pictures up and show everybody, and maybe have some kids come back and speak.
Yeah, that's actually a part of what they plan on doing, is doing a recap and everything. The agenda is a pretty good agenda as far as the itinerary. We're really appreciative. The district even has it where the students aren't sharing beds. Everyone has their own bed.
Yeah.
That was a big thing. And we're really looking forward to it. We had a meeting last week. It was really productive. So I'm excited.
I'm glad you're going, and I'm really proud that the kids will go. It'll be an experience of a lifetime, Those 3 days they're worth every dollar we spend.
Okay, thank you. Anything else, Mr. Bass? Mr. Reliable. Mr. Capizzi.
Thanks, Russ. I want to wish a very speedy recovery, and I'm sure I speak on the fellow board members and the administration to our colleague, Mr. Cadella. I also want to wish our superintendent a very happy birthday.
Thank you. It's tough getting to be 40. It's tough. It's been 40 years. It's tough. I feel it. Thank you, Mike.
Finally.
Getting up there.
Not bad, huh?
Yeah, 40. That was 20 years ago.
I want to thank the finance department for the budget, and Russ, thank you for running a quick and fast meeting, as always.
Thank you to the speakers. Happy birthday, Mark.
Thank you.
Speedy recovery and well wishes to Paul. Thanks to everyone involved with the audit committee. Great meeting today. Becky, Jackie, everybody involved with the budget. Thank you. Thank you, Rick, Mrs. Vudo for the presentation. And hope you all have a great week.
Thank you, Mr. Bilson. Mrs. Dunn.
Happy birthday to our great superintendent.
Thank you.
And I jumped for joy when I saw the video of our wrestlers on Facebook. It's good to hear good things and not always bad things. So I congratulate them and wish them a win and bless them for a safe trip there and back.
Thank you. Mr. Kinsemi.
I'll make it brief. I just want to confirm the good wishes for Paul, Mark. I hope you have another 40 years and take care of Earl. I think it'd be remiss if we didn't say tonight we all got an education. Rick and Mrs. Fudo, thank you. You pointed out a need specifically that's needed in our district, a direction for, I think, all of our teachers to follow in a handbook for our parents to realize it's the whole child. The whole child has to be taught. It's not just the academics. Mark, thank you for even thinking about bringing back music and art. And Nick, thank you for mentioning about the Intramural Sports. Our kids come to school for that. And we know research shows, give a kid an instrument and becomes a better student. He learns to read better, he learns to count better. It's all positive, there's no negative. Our art department has always been a leader. Our theater groups have always been outstanding. Ladies and gentlemen, we might do nothing totally right, but I'll tell you, we try our hardest to do everything to make this district look good. And Mark, and your leadership of your team, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pareto.
Okay, gang, financially, again, our Becky and company, you guys do an excellent job on this budget. You make it easy enough for us to follow and other folks to follow. And you're always thinking ahead. Mark also, we're always thinking one step ahead, what we can do to better this school and better our buildings. And in turn, with direction from our academics and Mr. Corella, we're thinking about, like Jimmy said, the whole student. Speed of recovery to our colleague, Mr. Cadella. And God bless you. I hope you come back quickly and be safe. Our wrestlers also very proud. I know some of those young men, and very proud to. I coach some of them in football. They are excellent, and I wish them well. Keeps our school, keeps the Wolverines on the map. And again, I'm always grateful to be serving on this board. And everybody have a good night. Oh, by the way, happy birthday, Mark.
Oh, thank you.
And the.
I was waiting.
Well, I was kind of hoping.
Right, I had to pass him a note.
You know what it was?
Now say happy birthday.
Yeah, no, you know what it was? The comment on the 79th Street sewer thing. You should come over and use that sewer because it's great.
Thanks, Tony. Staff, to my left? Anyone? Staff to my right? And I'll echo that, and since Mike gave the hint that it's going to be a short meeting, I will say goodnight, and we're going to adjourn tonight in memory of the following who are no longer with us. Gail Cashett Jacobowski, a former employee, David Dean, father-in-law of teacher Mary Beth Dean, Bonnie Hill, sister of Lisa Edwards, sister-in-law of Kevin Edwards, Maria Mikulich, retired teacher and cousin of yours truly, Judith Nadowski, former school nurse, and Mary F. Certo Morinello Roll, mother of Assembly Member Angela Morinello. We're adjourning the member of those. Could I have a motion? Well, thank you, Mr. Bilson. Mr. Consemi on the second. All in favor? Aye. Good night, everybody. Thank you for attending.